Well, hello and welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. We are going to have a great conversation around something that is likely sabotaging a lot of your time and you may not even know about it. And that has to do with things that are going on in our body, in our health, especially in the season of midlife. And so I don't know about you, but I want to feel fantastic in this season, and I want to make sure that I have the energy to do the things that God has called me to. And so our guest today, Amanda, is going to help us to reclaim 3 hours of energy daily, naturally, so that we can show up and do these things that God has called us to. So, Amanda, I'm so excited that you are here today. Want to welcome you to the Redeem Her Time podcast. You and I don't live too far from each other, and so it's been fun to get to know you, but I would love my audience to get to know you a little bit. So, tell us a little bit about what you're juggling in this season of life.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, I feel like it's like kind of a divine timing that we were able to connect, being relatively close to each other in location. Yeah, so I am definitely so focused and passionate about helping women to feel more connected with and empowered in their bodies and in their health, especially during this midlife season, right? Because let's be honest, so many of us have pretty substantial changes that take place when our hormones start to shift and we enter those years of perimenopause and then in through and to menopause. It's like it's almost like symptoms start to pop up, whether it's bloating or insomnia or anxiety, just changes in our body, feeling like we have a little bit of belly, extended belly, or less tone, less energy. These are common things that occur when your hormone levels start to diminish. And this is an opportunity to really become curious and say, like, what's going on? How can I lean in here and understand my body so that I can work with it and partner together with what my body needs in terms of nutrients, in terms of how to support my hormones, and really reclaim, like I said, hours every single day of extra vitality and energy and possibility because you're feeling good in your body
Yeah.
instead of stuck
Here's what
with
I always
the
say, and I
unwanted.
started off in health coaching, actually is part of my journey. But if you're not paying attention and giving these things time and attention, one day they will demand your attention, and it always will cost you more time, more money, more energy, more stress, more emotions, all the things. So I love how this ties into, yeah, our time and how we are able to approach our time as well. Because let's be honest, if you're not feeling well, you're feeling really frumpy or just kind of, foggy, then it's going to be really hard to show up in the way that you want to with the time that you have. So I'd love to hear a little bit
Yeah.
about your journey because oftentimes, God uses our story. So take us a little bit on just kind of the path that got you from where maybe you were when it came to your
Mhm.
health to how you're helping women today.
Yeah, that was definitely a divine redirection. So I'd always been interested in health and fitness, more from like the um, personal training side. I was a group fitness instructor and a sports performance instructor. So I thought, ironically, Alyssa, I thought I was a quote unquote very healthy person when I was in my 20s and early 30s because I was involved in the fitness arena. However, when I was pregnant with my fourth daughter, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, fairly common, especially with women. It's definitely where your thyroid function is being affected. And I remember sitting at the doctor's office and being in denial. In fact, I was quite angry by this news because I was like, what? How can that be? I eat salads and smoothies and I work out every day. I teach cardio kickbox classes. I quote unquote thought I was doing all the things on paper that lead to health and vitality. How could I be told I have this autoimmune diagnosis? And the doctor at the time described it and said, hey, you'll need to take this medication for the rest of your life to manage your thyroid. And by the way, once you have one autoimmune, you're more at risk for additional
Mm.
autoimmune diagnosis in the coming decades. So that future just did not resonate and correlate with what I envisioned for my future. That was step one. And then about 12 months after that, my oldest daughter, who was 8 years old at the time, had always been a really highly sensitive, sharp, witty girl and prone to becoming anxious and worried about a lot of things. But her anxiety progressed to the point of where she was having daily seizures, anywhere from 10 to 15 seizures every day. And so when I tell you that there's nothing more, oh gosh, just like it brought me to my knees, honestly, to be
Yeah.
so completely scared for her life
Yeah.
in
As a
many
mom,
scenarios.
to
Like
watch that had to have been, how long did that go on?
it lasted, she was having those seizures for about a 9 month period of time where they were really intense. And she was on 4 different benzodiazepine medications. We were down at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, best pediatric neurologists were running all the tests. And we were told something kind of like I had been told, that sometimes these things are genetic. There was no specific, like, hey, it's not, she has this tumor or
Mm.
any specific cause to explain her activity of seizures. And every fiber in my soul, like, I just knew that this isn't the whole story. Like, there has to be more to unpack here and to understand why these seemingly like random seizures came out of nowhere. Now I know, now knowing what I know that that's never the case, right? They come out of the unknown, not the, oblivious. But so that led me on a path. I knew that the kind of the treatment that I had been doing to help support my autoimmune dynamic, I had been working with a naturopathic doctor and a functional medicine doctor and a nutritionist, and I had a little bit of traction. I did a whole bunch of fancy lab tests and was given an elimination diet and 15 supplements to start taking for my own journey. But it didn't, candidly, it wasn't really substantial enough. I had a little bit of symptom improvement, but I still had insomnia. I was still breaking out. I was still losing hair. So my antibody numbers would kind of bounce up and down. So it wasn't this resolute, sustainable path. And I'm like, we have to do something more. That's when I was convicted to go back to school. So that's when I started to study functional medicine and spent a couple of years in a program to really understand the root cause dynamic of how our immune system and our endocrine system and our digestive system, how all of these systems in the body work together. And you're creating an environment to either build a health and improve it or
Mm.
to have it become blocked, depleted, and damaged, right, at a
Yeah.
cellular level. So that knowledge, that deeper understanding of what was the scenario, what was the dynamic in my daughter's situation. For her, it was she had some nutritional deficiencies. She had some neurotransmitter imbalance and stress response, like her body was stuck in that fight or flight stress response. That was actually what attributed to the seizure activity. It was like almost like her brain would get on overload from mental emotional stress and just like short circuit, if you will, in a really layman's way of viewing it.
Mm.
And so that journey of helping to rebuild her health, she was able to wean off of all medication. We were told she would never be able to drive a car and all these things. Well, that wasn't her future. She was able to wean off of all medication, has been seizure free for over 15 years. She's now on a full ride scholarship at the University of Notre Dame, going to start her junior year in college, and she's thriving. So that, and then applying that same kind of root cause approach to heal my autoimmune condition. I've been medication free as well for over 14 years, really managing my energy levels and the typical signs of thyroid imbalance. So we've lived it, and I was, once you have such a profound transformation, it's like you can't help but want to be of service. And
Right.
God wants to use me to help other women feel better in their bodies.
Yes, I love this. And I love that you didn't just take an answer from a doctor. Nothing against doctors. We do need them and they do
Yeah,
play a very important role. But you didn't just accept that this is my new normal and this is just how it is and there's nothing else I can do but take this medication. That you really took the time to, to do the work to figure, to really look deeper into all of those things. So you mentioned, the silent saboteur that often affects women's health. So I would love for you to tell us what is it, because we're all curious about, is this something that's affecting my health? And why is this especially an issue for us as my audience is Christian women, business owners, most of us in midlife, right? So we're in this season where we're not in the 20s and 30s anymore, and our bodies are starting to change. So maybe kind of tie in why this is,
yeah.
something we should be paying attention to in this season.
Definitely. So the silent saboteur that affects so many of us, especially midlife, is what I call why bother syndrome. And why
Mm.
bother syndrome looks like, see if you can resonate with, or if your listeners can resonate with any of this or have thought this way before. Maybe in this, at least 2 or 3 nights in the past 10 nights, you've just woken up and felt unrested, unwell, like you didn't fully feel recharged. Or perhaps, at least twice in the past month, you've thought to yourself, like, I wonder what else is going on with my body. Like it may be helpful to have deeper testing, to have my hormones looked at, or to have some more information. But life has always gotten busy and it's just been put on the back. You haven't followed through, you haven't done it, right? Or perhaps you've had a situation where at least once in the last 3 days, you've eaten something, had a meal where you're just like, oh, I just, convenience, whatever it is, it's just in the moment grabbing it, and then later regret and feel some guilt or some shame about your nutrition choices. So if you find yourself falling in these patterns where you're kind of putting up with and tolerating unwanted symptoms, or putting your health on the back burner because of time or just not sure what to do. Another like key cornerstone of why bother syndrome is like Googling things and looking up different, why am I having this bloating, Googling things, but not really gaining clarity and not having the prioritization to lean in to get some support and really spend time digesting what is it that your body needs to feel good. Again, putting other people's priorities, other people's needs before your own. It's why bother? Because we often have this, whether it's conscious or kind of in the back, a narrative that an expectation for declining health, especially after age 40. A lot of women kind of almost accept that, hey, everyone around me's got scenarios and different symptoms, and it's just kind of normal. It is what it is. And that is where I must take a strong stand of it doesn't, that's your call to action to lean in,
Mm-hmm.
not to just accept what is. Because
Yeah.
what you choose in your 40s and your 50s sets the stage for what happens in the decades beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And the statistics now show that 85% of Americans have two or more chronic disease diagnoses by the time they reach age 65. So if you don't want to have two or more chronic diagnosis by time age 65, what you're choosing in your 40s and your 50s is setting the stage for that.
Yeah, right. And it's so interesting how like you said, we put it off because either it's just not that bad yet, or we just aren't really quite sure what it is. But like eventually, right, it's going on and it's going to cost us
Yep.
more down the road, which is certainly not a way that, any of us want to spend our time is then dealing with, with the two or more chronic, issues and things like that. So I love this, that why bother syndrome, right? And so I'm going to challenge our listeners, right? I mean, Amanda gave some very specific like ways to see like, am I falling into this, And so really leaning into how are you feeling and are you willing to take a step and do something? Or like you said, just Googling it and kind of really not going anywhere from there. So when we don't do something, when we do give into the why bother syndrome and we put it off, I mean, this was me. I tell my story about hystericus globus when I had this sensation of a ball in my throat for over a year. And I ignored it for a long time. And finally, it was because I had had a thyroid cancer scare a couple years prior to that. And so then I thought, oh no, what if there is something growing again in there? I need to get it
Yeah.
checked out. Thankfully, it wasn't. It was technically all in my head. It was my anxiety around my time. And so that led to
Mm.
what I'm doing now. But yeah, I mean, I'm, living proof that it's really easy to just kind of put something off or kind of, like, well, I guess, yeah, I don't even know what this is and that kind of thing. So what happens when we
Yeah.
do put things off and don't give it time, when we do kind of let that, let that why bother thing kind of settle in.
Yeah, well, that's when the patterns start to become normalized, right? One of the most common patterns I see with women is, like, for example, is nutrient levels. Like every single cell in the body, we have over 1 billion cells in our body. Every single cell is nutrient dependent. And oftentimes we're just simply not getting in consistent, adequate amounts of key vitamins and minerals and antioxidants in order for those cells to continue to do their job right, right? It's like if you have a car and you don't put gas in it, but yet you're expecting it to drive down the highway. It's not going to work. Same thing with our cells. So I often see what this looks like is women will tell me all the time, oh, I just, I'm not even hungry in the morning. So they skip breakfast or they kind of grab their cup of coffee and cruise on through the morning until about 11 o'clock, right? Before they even start to think about having their first meal. Well, one of the most critical times, and actually science is now showing us that for women in particular, your cortisol peak, right? Cortisol tends to naturally rise and it reaches its peak typically about 1.5 to 2 hours after waking up. That's when it's at its highest, and then it starts to taper off throughout the day. If we enter that peak cortisol state fasted, and now do you hear all these catchphrases about intermittent fasting and the benefits of this and that? Most of those studies and that research was done on men and wasn't necessarily applicable to women, especially perimenopause or menopausal women who have different hormone levels. So we enter that peak cortisol state in an unfueled or fasted way. It actually creates a higher stressor on the body, driving your body into that fight or flight, that sympathetic fight or flight response. And once we're there, it's harder for a woman's body to get and to kind of toggle back into the parasympathetic rest, digest, and heal for the rest of your day.
Yeah.
So these are certain things, and honestly, when you get in the pattern, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you skip that breakfast, you enter that high cortisol rise peak state. It changes two areas of the brain, which control appetite is one, and the other one is really directly correlated to thyroid and estrogen regulation. Well, those are going to get downregulated. Thyroid function is going to get downregulated as well as your appetite, because the body is getting the signal of, we don't have fuel, we have to conserve, we have to hold on to this. So when you have low energy, when you have that 3 p.m. afternoon slump, chances are it's because this pattern has been repeated over and over. Right? So there's just a lot of very, very common decisions and choices that women make that I support these women all the time, and they don't even realize how one decision or one action or inaction is going to then have this downstream ripple effect. But once you start to learn and become aware of and inspired, now it's easier to make a different decision and watch how your body will respond differently.
It's so interesting because we have like, all this information or what we think is information from these experts, at our fingertips. And so then, we follow that, or we just jump from one thing to the next and not really pay attention to the long-term effects and what, like you said, this is doing and the patterns it's creating. So we always are here about intention. How can we intentionally invest our time in any of the 8 key areas, one of them being wellness? So I'd love for you to like kind of share with us about like, we don't want to, like whether we already have these patterns established or whether, we don't and we don't want, we don't want them established. Like, how do we start really approaching and addressing this area so that we don't fall into the why bother syndrome? And we also don't, make some of these choices like the one you just described that is going to have ripple effects down the road. Maybe kind of walk us through some practical steps, some tangible things
Yeah.
that we can do that are going to really help us in that area.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the key is to have some type of system in place for your health. And that system, right? So I often find it can be really helpful to have some learning component where you're learning and becoming curious, not only about your body, but what the signals mean, right? I always say your hormones are the messenger molecules on the body. So they're the ones that are going to start to get louder, not through words, but through symptoms. When you have symptoms, especially ones that are kind of niggly, unwanted, frustrating, that's your body trying to say, hey, pay attention, look over here, look over here.
Like screaming
And
at us,
so,
and we're like so
yes,
noisy with everything else. We don't pay attention. Yeah.
yes. And I would love to share with your listeners my free hormone health assessment. This is a great way where you can start to almost map your symptoms, like cues and clues, right? If it's headaches, if it's water retention, if it's bloating, whatever it is, those can point to, is it more of a thyroid thing? Is it more of an insulin thing or cortisol imbalance? So I'm happy to share with you, just like, I have a client thinking of a client story, but she did the hormone assessment and found out that she assumed her cortisol levels were really, really high because she had a lot of stress, and was aware of a lot of mental emotional stress with some family dynamics and things happening in her career. So when she actually took this quiz, she's like, oh, wait, this is actually pointing to low cortisol. And she was shocked. I'm surprised that it's lower than expected. If we had been, putting a demand on the body for a long time, it just ends up being flatlined. And why that matters is if you don't have adequate cortisol, that's kind of like the master hormone. But if you don't have enough of it, it's going to slow down thyroid function. It's going to affect your mental, emotional focus and brain fog and things like that. So she started putting all of these pieces together and realizing her body was actually opposite of what she thought it was. So that gives you a different approach to how to support low cortisol as compared to elevated cortisol, right? So that's just one thing. I'm happy to share that free hormone assessment. So step number one is get curious.
Okay.
Get curious about what is your body showing you? What is it saying through your symptoms? The next one is to have some way of learning and distilling it down so it actually is applicable to your body at this season of your life. So, for example, there's no, you just mentioned, there's no lack of health information out there. You can Google anything and you can get directly conflicting pieces of advice, right? So that's, I think, where some of the frustration comes down to. I definitely encourage your listeners or anyone who's kind of this is piquing a nerve with them is to get some professional support, whether it be a doctor, whether it be a mentor or a coach or someone who can help you distill through and understand what's relevant to you in your body, right? So that you're not becoming overwhelmed with the conflicting data. You're kind of distilling it down. I think it's really helpful to get some data points to look at. Like I often look at hormone assessment, micronutrient tests, so you can see like what's going on physiologically in my body.
Hmm.
Now I can use this as a roadmap. And then we look at replenishing nutrients. That's almost one of the core foundations first. Build in and add in what has been missing so that your body has the raw materials to do what it needs to do. The next step is to really have a system in place, honestly, so that if you're trying to, let's say you're starting to eat in a new way, adding in some extra vitamin A or vitamin E because you realize, hey, I've got a lot of inflammation. I need some more antioxidants for my body. Well, after a few weeks or a month or so of eating this way, how can you assess and review like what's working,
Hmm.
what's not? What
Hmm.
did I notice? What's changing? That's the only way we really become internally informed is to put something into action, witness the impact, and then review, right, and assess and tweak. So I think, and then your final step is that modification, that refinement, right? So that's if you think about a system, it's like having a system for your health of what is what's my starting point, what's my objective, where's my goal, what's my tactic, what's the thing I'm doing in a new way now, what the results that it created, and how can I refine to get background. If you can do that for yourself, great. If you need some support or some guidance, that's really where a lot of coaches, mentors, that's exactly what I do with my clients is help walk them through a very clear and specific process that's customized to their body. So they have that knowing. It's like now you know what works for your body now, because usually what works in your 40s or 50s is different than what worked previously.
Yes, this is so important. And again, something that takes time and takes knowledge and takes, like you said, noticing and then making changes, giving time, coming back and reviewing. And, that's why I love having people like you who are knowledgeable and are able to help walk us through that process and create that system so that we can. I mean, this is, the temple that God has given us, right? This is what's going to carry us through as many years as He gives us here on this earth. And so we want it to be functioning at its best so that we can continue to enjoy and life and do the things that he's called us to. And so we need someone who can see what we can't see and help us to know
Yep.
what to do, what we don't know to do, and help us figure out, yeah, what's working, not working, that kind of thing. So I always love to tie the work that we do in an area like our wellness in back into our time and our roadie, our return on time invested. So when we take the time because it is going to take some time to pay attention. So many of us, we've just stuck our fingers in
Yeah.
the ears and we just keep going on. We're not really paying attention to then seek out the resources to try, like you said, make some changes and then assess how they're doing. Like, how does this overall affect our time and the return that we see on our time, whether it's in our
Mm,
business or whether it's just in how we're able to approach life? Kind of walk us through a little bit about why does it matter to give this
yeah.
this time and attention now?
Well, I think of actually there's this beautiful health wealth connection actually, and I talk about this fairly regularly because wealth in all areas. When you have health and vitality, you have opportunity and possibility and clarity, which leads to a wealth in every area of life, relationship wealth. You can show up with more patience, with more grace, with more kindness for yourself and others. So that only strengthens relationships that are in your life. When you think about other types of wealth, wealth of opportunities, right? When we think about as a business owner, it's hard to take action or step forward into new opportunities. Like I will be sharing later how I'm doing a TEDx talk later this year, but to say yes to those things that are going to stretch us beyond our comfort zone or have additional, take more capacity, right? For you to mentally focus or to be sharp and to be on your game. If you're feeling crummy, you just can't muster the will or the desire or the drive to follow through on some of these new opportunities for growth and expansion as like a business owner or in your professional career. The other area that actually has a direct correlation is your financial well-being, because
Mm.
even the statistics show that women with hormone imbalances are 30% more likely to experience financial strain due to either missed earned income opportunity or the rising costs of medical care down the road. So there literally is a direct correlation. In fact, my clients have documented that they've saved on average $30,000 in the 5 years following our work together. And that's either in the form of increased promotions, business growth and expansion, or from canceled lumpectomy surgeries that were $5,000 procedures or things like things that they were able to save money on or able to earn more money as a result of their capacity and their health.
It's
So
so
there
interesting
really
how many
is
different
this.
areas it touches, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So when you think about return on time invested, absolutely. Because you are the center of what then interacts with every area of your life. And when you're coming from a place of more clarity, more stability, more possibility and energy, you
Mm,
just have more to give. More so
yeah.
I truly look at it as like we are here to be vessels of God's light and you can shine brighter.
I love this, right? And this is how we steward well what's been entrusted to us. Because as
Mhm.
long as we are sad, stuck, sick, those kinds of things, we're not going to be able to shine and step up and do the things that God has called us to. So, what's one piece of encouragement or advice that you would give to someone listening who's going, "Okay, Amanda, I've probably been ignoring this for a while. I have been falling into that, the okay, I don't even know what to do, why bother syndrome type thing." What would you say to her that would encourage her to start seeking out changes in this area?
I would say find somebody that you can partner with, whether it be a health practitioner or a sister or a friend that is like, hey, you know what? Let's do this. Don't try and do it alone.
Mm,
Because when you can find that community, that support, that's likely going to allow you to stick with it more through the journey. So find someone that you can partner with and maybe start with the hormone assessment just to start to get curious about what's my starting point? What is my body showing me now?
mm.
But partner up, find someone, whether it be a mentor, a accountability partner, somebody that you can be on this journey to improve your health with. And think of it as a journey. It truly is. Like, it's not like our health is something that's with us for the rest of our life. It's not like you get a high school degree or a college degree and then check the box, I'm complete. No, it's going to be a journey of living with vitality. So find that companion to partner with and make it.
Yeah, and you would be a great companion, Amanda. So I will give a shout out to you in that. So as we're winding up today, obviously there's so much more in this topic that we could dive into. But what you've mentioned this resource. So, go ahead and just maybe tell us what to expect with this assessment, and we'll make sure to link to it in the show notes.
Yes, absolutely. So when you go to the assessment, there's going to be a couple of questions on, we look at the top six metabolic hormones. So thyroid, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and insulin. And again, it has you map your symptoms to really give you a framework of, are there signs of either elevated or depressed levels of these six hormones? And then there's also a personal reflection, kind of in that zone of like, why bother? Kind of on a scale, you can assess based on your behaviors and your thoughts and your decisions about your health. Are you in that place of being an empowered leader of your health where you're really actually on top of it? You've got a game plan, you have an approach, or are we kind of more stuck in the passive health reactor, which is a key wake up of like where I was?
Yeah,
No judgment. I was in that place when I
me
had that
too.
autoimmune diagnosis, right? It seemed to come out of the blue. And what I've learned is nothing comes out of the blue. It becomes out of the unaware. We're not tuning in. We're not paying attention.
Mm.
So that it's a great kind of pairing of like the physical symptoms, but then also like a self check of, ooh, am I taking action? Am I being intentional with my health, or am I letting that kind of fall to the back burner and being passive and reactive?
Yeah, I would say awareness is the first step. As long as we
Yeah.
are oblivious of to the fact that there's something going on, then we're not going to do anything different and give it the time and attention it needs. So we'll be sure to link to that assessment in the show notes. And then I want to invite everyone to come join us over inside the Redeem Her Time community. I feel like we get into this conversation, and then just like you said, I don't want this to be one of those Google experiences where you like heard some great things and you're like, okay, I'm not going to skip breakfast now. I can check that box, but you still have these other deeper layers of things. And so I've invited Amanda to come over and be with us inside the community. This is where we continue the conversation, where you can come and ask questions and find out more about how Amanda can support you and things like that as well. So if you're not a member yet, come find us at redeemhertime.com/community and come join us. It's a group of really committed, called Christian women in business who want to be good stewards, not just of our time, but also of our bodies and our businesses and these other things that God has given us that we want to, have vitality for so that we can keep shining the light and doing the things that we want to do. So come and join us. And I would also, yeah, encourage you that if, as you're doing this, and Amanda encouraged us to find a friend as we're doing this, who can you share this episode with that also may be experiencing some of these symptoms? And maybe the two of you have been just saying, well, this is just menopause or midlife or how it is. And like invite her into this conversation, share this episode with her, invite her to come into our community and let's lock arms and really say, no, we're not going to say this is just the norm. We are going to pay attention
Mhm.
to what our bodies are telling us. So that's how we change things, right, Amanda?
Yes, yes. And one more thing I'd love to share is if your listeners are interested, they can pick up my best-selling book, The Thyroid and Hormone Solution. When you go to the website, you can also see where to buy this. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and so forth. But this is another resource if you're like, hey, I want to take that step, maybe do a book partner with your friend or something like that to have a process to dive deeper and really understand what your body is trying to tell you.
Fantastic. Yes, we'll make sure that we get all of that linked. So go check it out. We need resources and we need people like Amanda who have taken the time to do the research and are able to really help point us in the right direction. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insight and your story with us today, Amanda. It's been encouraging, inspiring. I pray it moves many of us to action who maybe have been kind of doing the why bother type thing. So, yeah. And as we close, it's summertime now. And so, summertime, oftentimes, we've got things where we're working on our business, but then we also have a lot of life things that we want to enjoy. So, I always love to end with this question, like, what is it time for in this season for you? And what kind of roadie return on time invested are you expectant of from that as you look ahead at summer?
Yes. Oh, it's a fun summer. I'm super excited about this summer. This summer, I have two daughters that are going to be going away to college in August. So definitely prioritizing spending time as a family together. We have a family trip planned to Missouri to just go and relax and be in each other's company and share. And like I said, I mentioned to you, I'm working on preparing for an upcoming TEDx talk later in the year. So a lot of inner work for kind of stretching myself to go to that next level of preparation and being able to, really provide a valuable, inspiring, action motivating delivery of a talk. So that'll be coming up later this fall and kind of more the inner work for myself. But that return on time invested is just getting to share this message and be God's light to the
Mhm.
world, to more people.
Yeah, I love that. Well, have a beautiful summer, and we'll be excited to
Thank
connect
you.
with you over in the community. And yeah, thank you for being with us today. Thanks everyone for joining us. And let's not just let this be one that goes in one ear and out the other. Like let this be the one that we don't give in to the why bother syndrome, and we do give time and attention to something that is so important. in stewarding our bodies well so we can steward our callings well. So, all right, we'll look forward to seeing you all over there. Thanks so much, Amanda.